Welcome, welcome everyone to ManageEngine Patch Tuesday webinar for the month of October. This Halloween season, let's take proactive steps to strengthen our defenses, ensuring our data remains protected from any spooky surprises. Folks, it's time to enhance our security by applying the latest patches and updates in this month's Patch Tuesday. With immense gratitude, we express our delight at having you all join us on this fine evening. Let's get ready for an insightful session. I'm Niveda, product expert at ManageEngine, and I'll be your presenter today. Alongside me, we have Apache pundits ready to engage with you in real time via chat. So please feel free to post your questions throughout the webinar. Kindly note that it will be a 60-minute webinar and it is being recorded. The recorded session will be sent to your registered email IDs in 2 to 3 working days. So what's on the agenda for today's session? First up, we will have a detailed breakdown of the Windows life cycle as well as the end-of-life dates for the various Windows versions. Next, we'll be discussing the Patch Tuesday updates for the month of October. And then, we'll also be demonstrating how you can simplify the patch management process for your network's endpoints using ManageEngine's patch management solution. Followed by that, we will also be sharing some of the best practices for patching that you can follow to perform patch management for your hybrid networks. And last but not the least, as always, we'll have a question and answer session wherein we'll be addressing all your queries. So let's take a look at the Windows lifecycle now. Here's the latest scoop. Windows has officially released Windows 11 version 24H2 on October 1. For those using the Enterprise Edition, keep in mind that its active and security support will end on October 12, 2027. Meanwhile, the Home and Pro editions will see their support end on October 13, 2026. I take privilege in announcing that ManageEngine supports Windows 11 version 24H2. Also, if you are still on Windows 11 version 23H2, which was launched on September 20, 2022, just a heads up guys, that both the Enterprise and Home and Pro editions will lose support on October 14, 2025. So if you haven't upgraded yet, now's the time to move to version 24H2. At ManageEngine, we are excited to share that you can easily initiate the feature pack update through Patch Manager Plus. For step-by-step instructions on upgrading to latest feature pack, just check out the forum link shared in the chat. Don't wait too long. Upgrading to the latest version is definitely the way to go. Let's move on to Patch Tuesday update breakdown. So this time there are 117 vulnerabilities, out of which 5 are also zero-day vulnerabilities. We'll be discussing them in the later slides, but taking a look at the breakdown here, we see a total of 203 patches released to mitigate the 117 vulnerabilities. Also, if these vulnerabilities are left unpatched in your endpoints, they can cause 7 different kinds of impacts in your system, which we'll also be discussing in detail in the following slides. So as I said earlier, there are 5 zero-day vulnerabilities released in this month's Patch Tuesday, right? So let me quickly show you where you would find zero-day vulnerability in our Endpoint Central console so that you can patch those vulnerabilities. Let's head over to our console. So let's navigate to the top menu, click on Threats and Patches. Once the console loads, on the left pane, let's click on Threats and choose zero-day vulnerabilities. So as you can see, the first zero-day vulnerability here was actually released on this month's Patch Tuesday, guys. So if I want to go ahead and fix this vulnerability in my system, let me just tick off this box and click on Install Patches. Let's click on Yes and proceed. It will automatically take you to manual deployment. And by applying all the necessary configurations, you can successfully patch this zero-day vulnerability. So let's go back to our presentation. So folks, due to time constraint, this was just a brief look into the zero-day vulnerability patching. To dive deeper into the capabilities of Patch Manager Plus, please take a moment to answer the poll shared in the chat so that we can arrange a full-fledged demo for you all. I shall pause for a couple of moments for you to answer the poll. Alright folks, let's dive into the zero-day vulnerabilities. First up, we have CVE 2024-43572 in Microsoft Management Console, and it is being actively exploited. The zero-day vulnerability in them can cause remote code execution, and it is marked as important. An attacker could take advantage of this vulnerability by using social engineering tactics to persuade a target to open a specially crafted file. If successful, the attacker could execute arbitrary code on the vulnerable system. This has been assigned a CVSS rating of 7.8. Moving on to the next zero-day vulnerability, CVE 2024-6197, found in open source curl, and it is being actively exploited. This vulnerability can again cause remote code execution. The vulnerability was disclosed on July 24, 2024. In response, a fix was promptly released with curl version 8.9.0 on September 10, 2024. This update specifically addressed the way buffers are handled, preventing potential overflow issues that could be exploited by attackers. While curl took immediate action to patch the vulnerability, Microsoft included a resolution for this issue in its October 2024 Patch Tuesday release. This update ensures that the curl command line tool bundled with Windows is upgraded to the fixed version, enhancing overall security for users. This has been assigned a CVSS rating of 8.8. The next zero-day vulnerability is CVE 2024-43573, found in Windows MS HTML platform. This vulnerability in it can cause spoofing. So here's the deal. An unauthenticated remote attacker could exploit this vulnerability by getting someone to open a malicious file. Microsoft has noted that CVE 2024-43573 is currently being exploited. It's wild to think this is already the fourth zero-day vulnerability in the Windows MS HTML platform that's been in play this year. This has been assigned a CVSS rating of 6.5. The next zero-day vulnerability is CVE 2024-2069, found in Windows Hyper-V, and it assesses as exploitation less likely. This is probably because there are several conditions that need to be in place for an exploit to work, like a user rebooting their machine and specific behaviors from applications, among other actions that users have to take. If an attacker successfully exploits this, they could bypass a virtual machine's unified extensible firmware interface on the host machine. This would mean both the hypervisor and the secure kernel could end up compromised, which is pretty concerning. The last zero-day vulnerability of this month is CVE 2024-43583, found in Windows Logon and is rated as important. This vulnerability in it can cause elevation of privilege. A local, authenticated attacker could take advantage of this vulnerability to gain system privileges. Microsoft has noted that this vulnerability was publicly disclosed before a patch was released. To protect yourself, make sure to apply the patch for CVE 2024-43583 as soon as you can. Now let us move on to the critical vulnerabilities. We have 3 critical vulnerabilities released this month out of the total 117 vulnerabilities. Important vulnerabilities are 113 in number, and we have 1 moderate vulnerability. So let's talk in detail about the critical vulnerabilities. The critical vulnerability CVE 2024-43582 is a remote code execution vulnerability affecting the remote desktop protocol server. As we know, A remote desktop protocol server allows users to connect to and control another computer over a network using a graphical interface. To exploit this vulnerability, an unauthenticated attacker must send specially crafted malicious packets to a remote procedure call host. If the attack is successful, it could allow the attacker to execute arbitrary code on the server, operating with the same permissions as the RPC service. This not only compromises the integrity of the server, but also poses a serious security threat as it could lead to unauthorized access to sensitive data. Moving to the next critical vulnerability, CVE 2024-43488 is again a remote code execution vulnerability affecting the Visual Studio Code extension for Arduino. As we know, the Visual Studio Code extension for Arduino lets users create, build, and deploy Arduino sketches right within Visual Studio Code. It comes packed with handy features like syntax highlighting, IntelliSense, and automatic project scaffolding to make development smoother. However, there is a security concern. The extension lacks proper authentication for critical functions, which means an unauthenticated attacker could exploit this vulnerability to execute remote code. This is definitely something users need to be aware of. And lastly, we have CVE 2024-43468, which is again a remote code execution vulnerability affecting Microsoft Configuration Manager. We are aware that Microsoft Configuration Manager is a powerful systems management tool that helps IT professionals oversee large group of computers and servers. However, there's a vulnerability that poses a risk. An unauthenticated attacker could exploit it by sending specially crafted requests to the target environment, which aren't processed safely. If successful, this could allow the attacker to execute commands on the server or even manipulate the underlying database, which is a serious concern for security. Now, speaking about the patches by impact, as we mentioned earlier, that if these vulnerabilities are left unpatched, they can have 7 different kinds of impact on your systems, starting with 42 causing remote code execution, 28 causing elevation of privilege, 26 causing denial of service, 7 causing spoofing, again 7 causing security feature bypass, 6 causing information disclosure, and 1 causing tampering. Now let's take a look at the operating systems and the applications that have been affected this month. So as we saw earlier, there were a total of 117 vulnerabilities, out of which 97 have been found in Windows, 9 in developer tools, 6 in Microsoft Office, 4 in Microsoft Azure, and 1 in SQL Server. Apart from these, we also have System Center and Mariner that were also affected. Dear participants, if you want the entire information about the Patch Tuesday updates, you can directly refer to ManageEngine's Patch Tuesday forum post that had already been shared in the chat. We are glad to tell you that out of all the patches that have been released in October 2024, so far we support a total of 1,145 patches using ManageEngine, Endpoint Central, Patch Manager Plus, and Vulnerability Manager Plus. I see a few of the attendees joining now. So folks, in case you have missed the first part of the webinar, there's absolutely nothing to worry about because we are recording this session, and in 2 to 3 working days, we'll be sharing the recording of the session as well as the slide deck of this presentation with your registered email IDs. Meanwhile, dear guests, if you have any queries, please feel free to ask via chat. Our expert patch pundits will be answering them. Next up, I'll be demonstrating how you can simplify patch management in your network with ManageEngine Endpoint Central, Patch Manager Plus, and Vulnerability Manager Plus. So for that, let's jump into our comprehensive patch coverage. So folks, we are all about providing solid patching support for systems on Windows, Mac OS, and Linux. For Windows, we covered both desktop and server operating systems, including those LTSC editions. When it comes to Linux, we have got a wide range of distributions covered, including Red Hat Enterprise Linux, SUSE Linux, Ubuntu, Debian, CentOS, Pardus, Oracle Linux, Rocky Linux, and Amazon Linux. And it doesn't stop here, it actually gets even better. We offer support for over 1,000 third-party applications, making our service some of the best in the business. You'll find popular apps like Adobe, Java, Google Chrome, Firefox, and many Microsoft and Apple programs on our list. Specifically, we cover 1,052 Windows third-party updates, 221 for Mac OS, and 277 for Linux. Now that we have seen the comprehensive coverage, let's chat about the SLAs for our latest patch releases. We pride ourselves on providing timely support for all kinds of updates. Our dedicated patch crawler team is always on the lookout, scanning the internet and vendor websites for the latest vulnerabilities and patch info. Once they find updates, they download the latest patches and software, making sure everything is authentic and secure. After that, we run compatibility and functionality checks in an internal testing environment. For third-party updates, we typically support them within 6 to 9 hours of release. Security updates come next, with support in 12 to 18 hours, while non-security updates are handled within 24 hours. For our Linux users, we aim to support all updates within 24 to 72 hours of release. Our goal is to keep your systems updated and secure. Plus, you get to choose which types of patches you want to manage using our product. So to demonstrate that, let us once again hop to the console. So on the top pane, hit on these three buttons and choose admin. Once you're in the admin section, go to patch database settings under patch settings. So here you can choose to manage various updates, Microsoft updates, third-party updates, driver updates, or BIOS updates for Windows. If you're on Mac OS, you can handle Apple patches and third-party updates. And for Linux, we have got Linux patches and third-party updates at your fingertips. Everything you need is right here from the get-go, no extra effort required on your part. And don't worry, the whole process is secure. Any packages we download and install on your network are carefully validated before they are deployed. Let us go back to our presentation. Now, let us take a look at some of the best practices for patching a distributed network. So by distributed network, I mean users in LAN as well as users in branch offices and roaming users. So let's get started. First of all, as a thumb rule, you should always test patches before deployment. Always conduct tests on a pilot group of machines to identify any anomalous behavior before rolling out patches to the wider environment. This helps avoid the complications of rollbacks. The second best practice is prioritizing critical updates. With numerous patches released during Patch Tuesdays, it's essential to prioritize critical and security updates first, followed by less urgent updates like feature packs or quality rollups. The third best practice would be aligning with Patch Tuesdays. Synchronizing your patching schedule with monthly Patch Tuesdays allows for a dedicated testing period. This way, you can deploy tested patches effectively after their release. The next best practice is selecting an appropriate deployment window. Choosing a broad deployment window is ideal, and also non-business hours as a deployment window is suggested. This ensures that the end users experience minimal disruption, especially for business-critical systems. And the last best practice is allowing user flexibility. It's important to let users postpone or skip patch deployments and reboots. This approach helps maintain their productivity and comfort during the patching process. So I believe we are clear with the best practices now. On the right side of the screen, you can see the QR code to download the free ebook regarding the best practices for patch management. Kindly scan it to download the ebook. We will also be providing the link to download the ebook in the chat. Also, to my IT admin friends out here, if you guys follow some different best practices for patching in your hybrid network, please feel free to share over chat so that we can share this with our community. Now, let's dive into how to implement the best practices we discussed here. For this, I'll use a specific example scenario. Imagine your organization has a patch policy that requires you to test security update patches in a test environment following each Patch Tuesday release. After a week of monitoring, you would then roll out those patches to all machines, aiming for 100% compliance by the next Patch Tuesday. I will be explaining this scenario in the console, but before that, please let us know what is your organization's patching policy. Provide detailed information as we aim to address these scenarios in future Patch Tuesdays and develop best practices for you. Your shared scenarios will remain anonymous. So now, let's see how we achieve this using our Endpoint Central console. Let's head over to the console now. All right. So our first task is to test the patches, right? To do that, we'll navigate to the threads and patches. Okay. So let's click on deployment on the left pane and select test and approve. So here you'll see the test and approve groups that have already been created. Administrators can select specific computers for testing patches, which might include servers, developer machines, or other business critical devices. So now let's go ahead and create a new group. As you can see, we support patching across 3 platforms: Windows, Mac, and Linux. The next step would be to select your target. So you can select the custom group that you have already created. So let me choose test here. Moving on to the deployment options, you can choose Microsoft updates based on their severity here. So I'm going to choose security updates. You also have the flexibility to patch all applications or target specific applications or patch all applications except a few. I'm going to go with patch all applications. If you want third-party updates as well, you can enable this checkbox. You can also check off driver updates if you want. Coming to the deployment policy, you can choose the download immediately or the deploy at the earliest policy, since we will be immediately testing the patches. Now let's talk about the notification settings. If you'd like to receive updates about the test and approval activities, you can easily enable this checkbox and enter your email address here. Also, for those of you who have configured the Patch Manager Plus mobile app available on both Google Play Store and iOS App Store, you can choose the technicians right from the drop-down menu here. Finally, we have the approval mode for tested patches. If you want your tested patches to be automatically approved after a certain number of days, simply enable this checkbox. So in our case, I'm giving 7 days here since we are testing the patches for a week. Once you've made your choices, let's go ahead and click Create. Just give me a moment, guys. And there you have it. Our test and approve group has been successfully created. Now that we have successfully tested the patches on our pilot group of machines, it's time to roll them out to our production environment, right? So the second step to achieve this would be to automate deployment to production machines after testing. So guys, this is where our amazing feature, automate patch deployment, really comes into play. So once we get the green light to deploy those validated patches, this feature tells us seamlessly push them out to all the machines. So let me click on automate patch deployment here. Create a new task. I'm going to click on Windows. So guys, the first task would be to create a policy. So let's choose deployment settings, and here let me create a new policy. So I'm going to name my policy to Patch Tuesday Deploy Policy. Let's click on Save. All right. Coming to the deployment option, we have regular split and based on Patch Tuesday split. I'm going to choose based on Patch Tuesday split as it is the best practice to follow. Coming to the preferred weeks, I'm going to click all weeks and all days. Moving to the deployment window, I'm choosing a really broad window here. So I'm going to go from 12 p.m. to 12 a.m. Post that, you have pre-deployment activities where you can wake computers on LAN, pre-deployment reboot, as well as custom script. So here when you drag and drop the pre-deployment reboot and click on it, you also have the option to skip reboot for servers here. So this option is included to exclude business critical machines from rebooting. Similarly, we have here pre-deployment user notification. If you want notifications, kindly enable this checkbox, and with these custom messages, you will receive notification. Similar to pre-deployment activities, we also have post-deployment activities too. Let us click on Save and Continue. And voila, our deployment policy is created. Let's go back to our automate patch deployment task. So let me first name the task here. I'm naming it as Microsoft Security Updates. All right, let's click on Save. So let us select the Microsoft Updates here too, just the same as Test and Improve. So guys, you have your antivirus updates here and driver updates. If you want to enable this, just tick off the box here. Coming to the deployment here, I want my patches to be deployed after 7 days because we are dedicating a week for monitoring the patches, right? So I'm gonna type 7 here. Let's click on next. So under deploy option, you have deploy or publish to self-service portal, where the end users can schedule downtime for the critical machines and deploy the necessary patches. I'm going to go with deploy. So let me choose the policy that I created. All right, guys. So the next step would be to define our target. Since we are planning to deploy to all machines now, I shall randomly choose Sydney. All right, so this means all patches will get deployed to this target group. Next, you have configure notifications. So you can choose to configure notifications if you want. This is totally optional. So let me click on save. And our APD task is successfully created. And guys, if you remember our scenario, we decided to achieve 100% compliance report, right? So let's see how to do it. Now let's dive into our report section. And if you head over to the predefined reports, you will find system compliance report. So here's the fun part. You can choose a compliance percentage that works for your organization, whether it is 90, 95 or 100 or even a different number, it's totally up to you. And don't forget about the filter option. If you want to focus on a specific platform, branch office or operating system, just set your filters and you'll get a clear view of both compliant and non-compliant systems. That wraps up scenario 1, guys. Easy peasy lemon squeezy it was, wasn't it? Just like those example scenarios, you can tweak your deployment methods to suit your organization's needs. It's all about finding what works best for you. So guys, to dive deeper into the capability of Patch Manager Plus, I request you again to please take a moment to answer the poll shared in the chat so that we can arrange a full-fledged personalized demo for you all. I shall pause for a couple of minutes. Alright guys, I hope you have answered the poll. I'm pleased to announce that Patch Manager Plus offers integration with Tenable.io, Tenable.se, and Rapid7. If you use any of these products, you can seamlessly integrate them with Patch Manager Plus. As a result, any vulnerability details that have been scanned by Tenable and Rapid7 can be effortlessly imported into the Patch Manager Plus console, allowing you to efficiently deploy patches directly from the Patch Manager Plus intuitive console. If you're looking for a more detailed guidance on a smooth integration process, you can find all the necessary information in the chat through the links that we have shared. Also, if you'd like to explore this further, feel free to ask for a demonstration by providing your email addresses in the chat. Once the webinar wraps up, you'll find a form where you can request a demo session for the Tenable Rapid7 integration or any of the modules you might need assistance with. Just let us know what piques your interest. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be moving on to the question and answer session, wherein we'll be answering all your queries. So if you have any queries, please feel free to ask via chat. Myself, as well as our expert panelists, would be very happy to answer all your queries. Meanwhile, I'll just give a walkthrough of our offerings. We have Endpoint Central, which is a unified endpoint management and security solution. We also have an MSP version of this. We have Patch Connect Plus, which is an add-on that seamlessly integrates with SCCM and Intune-based networks to offer patching for 600 plus third-party applications. Next up, we have Vulnerability Manager Plus, that is our in-house vulnerability scanning and mitigation solution, that it scans vulnerabilities and deploys patches right from a single console. And we lastly have Patch Manager Plus, our flagship patch management solution. So guys, we'll be wrapping up the session in a few minutes. And once we close the session, you'll see a rating window pop up. Feel free to rate the webinar on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being the highest rating. Your feedback is greatly appreciated. If you have any queries, please don't hesitate to post it on our chat. Our expert panelists would be happy to help you with any of the queries. Before we wrap up, I want to let you know about an exciting free webinar we are hosting on delivering a unified IT service experience, integrating Service Desk Plus and Endpoint Central. It's happening on the 17th of this month at 10 a.m. GMT and 12 p.m. EDT. Creating a seamless IT service experience is the key to delivering outstanding service and satisfaction to your customers. But we know that IT leaders and service delivery managers often struggle with fragmented processes and disconnected tools. So, how can you overcome these challenges? By integrating Service Desk Plus with Endpoint Central. This integration can supercharge your help desk with automated patching, app deployment, asset management, and more. If you're interested, just scan the QR code on the slide to register, or you can find the registration link in the chat box. Join us to discover how you can unlock the full potential of unified IT. Dear participants, we are trying to answer as many questions as possible. In case we have missed any of your questions, no worries. We will be answering them via email. Kindly drop your email IDs in the chat. Dear participants, do not hesitate to ask any of your queries. Our expert patch pundits are here to resolve your queries. In case we have failed to answer your questions, do not worry. Our support team will reach out to you through your registered email IDs. So we'll be closing the session now. And once we close the session, you'll have a rating window wherein you can rate the webinar from 1 to 5, with 5 being the highest. So, all right. Thank you. Thank you so much, dear participants, for joining us today. See you again next month.